Imagine yourself walking into your own home, anticipating a pleasant dinner with your 17-year-old daughter. Instead, what meets your eyes is a scene straight out of a horror movie. Your daughter lies on the floor, and standing over her is a man with a bloodied shovel. This is precisely what Brittani Marcell encountered when she entered her home in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on September 11, 2008. Brittani Marcell raised 7 children on her own, yet she managed exceptionally well, and the family lived in a lovely neighborhood. The children never missed an opportunity to gather together for a family dinner or supper. Brittani's 17-year-old daughter, Brittani, attended school and nurtured a dream of someday working in television. In the meantime, she worked part-time at a shopping center selling sunglasses. Overall, Brittani's life, along with her close-knit and loving family, was wonderful until September 11, 2008. On that day, Brittani was supposed to come home from school and her mom from work to spend time together over lunch. Around noon, Brittani Marcell pulled up to her home. Upon entering, she found Brittani lying on the floor, covered in blood. Standing over her was a stranger holding a shovel. Brittani clearly startled the man, but instead of fleeing, he dropped the shovel, grabbed a kitchen knife, and headed toward her, threatening that she would be next. Brittani, as a mother, had to make a difficult but obviously correct decision. She left her daughter lying on the floor, ran to the neighbor's house, and called for help. Then, without waiting for the police to arrive, Brittani returned to the house with a neighbor. As it turned out, instead of pursuing the woman, the attacker rushed into the house, smashed the dining room window, climbed out onto the street, and fled. Later, investigators would find the broken window at the rear of the house. But what was far more important, they discovered a fresh drop of blood on the glass shards. Presumably, the criminal cut himself when he broke the window, leaving behind a crucial clue at the crime scene. Fortunately, Brittani's mother arrived home, scaring off the intruder and preventing him from completing his intentions. However, despite the fact that Brittani was still breathing, life barely lingered in her body. The examining doctors immediately induced her into an artificial coma. There was no guarantee that she would wake up, and even if she did, nobody knew if she would ever be the same again, so the medical team endeavored to mentally prepare the girl's family for the worst. She remained in a coma for just under 2 weeks, and when she woke up, she was like a baby, needing constant care. She had to relearn how to speak, walk, dress herself, and even swallow food. She underwent numerous complex surgeries, particularly because of the severe damage to her head, requiring surgeons to remove a small portion of her brain. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect was that the doctors took a fragment of her damaged skull and placed it in her abdominal cavity, so it could regenerate there before being repositioned. While Brittani slowly regained her former physical shape, her brain continued to shield her from the harrowing memories, and she couldn't recall anything about the attack, initially even believing she had been in a car accident. Brittani admits that it was very difficult for her to accept the truth that someone had attacked her with a shovel in her own home. The main question revolved around who did this to Brittani. Was it a stranger who would target any victim, or was it someone who specifically came for Brittani? Because when investigators spoke to Brittani, she recalled that just the previous night, she heard some stones rustling outside her bedroom window. Although it didn't bother her at the time, she now wondered if it could have been the criminal observing the family. Various theories were considered regarding how he entered the house, but the most likely scenarios seemed to be that he either was already inside, or he ambushed the girl and pushed her inside when she opened the door. Often in such cases, the police have nothing but the body and nothing more. But in this case, there was a witness to the crime, a surviving victim of the crime, and even the DNA of the perpetrator. After the discovery of the blood drop and thus the DNA of the man, one could hope that he would be caught within days, but it was not to be. Such DNA was not in the National CODIS database. It remained only to hope that someone would recognize the man from the composite sketch drawn from Brittani's description. She described the attacker as a clean-shaven brunette between the ages of 20 and 30, standing 175 meters tall. The police released the suspect's features, but despite examining over 40 leads, the case did not progress. In 2010, Assistant District Attorney in Albuquerque, David Waymeyer, took on the case. It was glaringly obvious to him that until Brittani regained her memories of the attack, the sole piece of evidence in the hands of the police would be that single drop of blood. Because Brittani believed she was too strong to die, the case was classified not as murder, but as attempted murder. This meant that in just 5 years, even if detectives managed to find the assailant with a shovel, there would simply be nothing to charge him with due to the statute of limitations for prosecution having expired. Therefore, Waymeyer pulled off a trick that had only been attempted once before in New Mexico. Since the assailant's DNA was known, and it was known for what crime he would be accused, Waymeyer brought charges against the DNA profile of the perpetrator, calling it John Doe DNA profile. Essentially, as soon as investigators identify Brittany's assailant, Waymire can simply plug in his name instead of John Doe. This legal loophole essentially allows stopping the inexorable ticking clock, counting down the time left for the investigation. Thus, the man who attacked the schoolgirl with a shovel will not get away with this heinous crime. In August 2013, this case was assigned to Detective Jody Gonterman. With renewed vigor, she embarked on the investigation, interviewing numerous people, discarding many leads through DNA testing. But after several months of relentless work, she felt no further ahead than the day the investigation began. Therefore, in 2014, she took a rather bold step, this time with Brittany's involvement. Gonterman arranged for Brittany to meet with a forensic psychologist who had worked with the FBI and was skilled in techniques of inducing hypnosis. She hoped that hypnosis would help Brittany recall the events of that day and provide some new leads for the investigation. The detective understood that any information obtained couldn't be used in court because hypnosis wasn't recognized by the scientific community. Sufficient research hadn't been conducted, and there was no evidence to prove it as a reliable method of obtaining testimony. There were no guarantees that the patient wouldn't deliberately lie or that the psychologist wouldn't unintentionally lead them astray. To prevent this, the specialist Gonterman arranged to meet with Brittany was asked not to be informed about the case and began working with Brittany. Initially, he simply conversed with her to assess if she could consciously recall anything from her past. When Brittany mentioned school, it became apparent that not all was lost. And perhaps she didn't remember not due to head trauma, but because her brain was trying to protect her from the ordeal. During the session, which was recorded on camera, Brittany virtually relived the assault. She then went home to rest, and gradually began to recall more details about the attack. Finally, she was able to provide a description of her assailant. She recounted that he was a man with very fair skin, no tattoos, dark tousled hair, toned but not overly muscular, and tall. Brittany helped create a composite sketch, which was also shown to the public in hopes that someone would recognize the individual. However, none of the calls following the release of the composite sketch led to an arrest. Fortunately, Jody Gonterman had one more card up her sleeve. In 2016, the detective sent the attacker's blood sample to Parabon Nanolabs, a laboratory where scientists, by studying a person's DNA, could not only determine their hair, skin, and eye color, but also create a realistic image of what they might look like. While waiting for the analysis to be completed at Parabon Nanolabs, Gonterman insisted that Brittany review old photos, phone numbers in her address book, and other items that might jog her memory, and it worked. One beautiful day, Brittany called her and said that a name had surfaced in her memory, and she couldn't stop thinking about it. It was the name Justin Hansen, but she couldn't say what connected them. As it turned out, there was indeed a connection between the girl and Justin. Justin had once dated her best friend's sister, and they had a child together. Furthermore, Justin and Brittany worked in the same mall, and he often approached Brittany to chat. The detective delved into the past of 32-year-old Justin Hansen and found a report in which he was listed as a suspect in a violent incident. He had been seeing the girl for several years when one day he came to her house and attacked her. She chose not to pursue the matter because she was intoxicated at the time. But despite the girl withdrawing her statement and even continuing to see Justin, from Detective Gonterman's perspective, Hansen looked like a promising suspect, and it was definitely worth talking to him. Simultaneously, a report came from Parabon Nanolabs, indicating that the assailant was a brunette with very fair skin and green or brown eyes. Detective Gonterman later said, "We had one brunette with green eyes on our list, and his name was Justin Hansen. His resemblance to the snapshot generated on the computer couldn't be ignored." Gonterman and her partner went to Hansen's home, where he lived with his wife and 3 children. The man greeted the detectives amiably, but Gonterman couldn't shake her suspicions of him, especially since he initially claimed to have a poor memory of Brittany because he didn't like such young girls. However, his wife was 10 years younger than him, meaning they got married when she was 18, a year older than Brittany was on the day of the attack. He later denied even talking to the girl in the mall, but witnesses came forward stating that he would sometimes linger near the sunglass section for over an hour. Finally, when the detective brought up the idea of him providing his DNA sample to be excluded from the list of potential suspects, Hansen hesitated and said he wanted to think about it and consult with his mother. He took the detective's phone number and promised to call back the next day if he decided to provide the DNA sample. He didn't call, so the detective decided to dig deeper into his life. Interviews with Hansen's friends and acquaintances confirmed that he knew Brittany much better than he admitted. Moreover, Justin's number was saved in Brittany's phone. Additionally, his acquaintances spoke highly of him and claimed they would have never suspected him of any crime, especially assaulting a schoolgirl. The detective called him herself and asked if he had made a decision regarding the DNA sample. Once again, he refused, But this time, he was angry because Gonterman had spoken to his family and friends. Then, with the approval of the district attorney's office, the detective placed Hansen under surveillance to obtain the much-needed DNA sample. Police followed Justin to a fast food restaurant, where after finishing his meal, he tossed his cup into the trash. The cup was retrieved from the bin and sent to the laboratory, where Justin's DNA was compared to the blood found at the crime scene years ago, and the analysis revealed a match. It was Hansen's blood. Finally, after so many years, Gonterman was able to call Brittany and her mother and inform them that they knew who had attacked the girl. Hansen was arrested on July 5, 2017, 7 years after the attack on Brittany. His name was added to the John Doe DNA profile, and he faced several charges, including attempted murder. When questioned at the police station, he continued to deny involvement in the assault, insisting that the drop of blood found outside the Marcell family's house may not have been related to the crime. However, he failed to explain how a fresh drop of blood could end up on the shards near the girl's house, where he had no reason to be and wasn't acquainted with her. More telling to Gonterman was the moment when she placed Brittany's hospital photos in front of Justin and offered him to look at what he had done. Hansen took the photo, turned it over, and placed it back on the table. According to the detective, this indicated that he couldn't bear to look at the result of his actions. Justin Hansen's mother, Doreen Shoemaker, insists on her son's innocence, claiming that DNA found on the duct tape and on the two crime weapons, the shovel and the knife, found in the Marcell's house did not match Justin's DNA. She believes that additional analysis of the shovel and knife could have excluded her son, but it's too late for that now. The problem lies in the fact that in 2015, about 1 year before investigators even heard of Hansen, when one of the detectives working on the case was retiring, a clerical error led to the destruction of almost all the evidence in the case. Therefore, all efforts had to be focused on that one drop of blood found outside the Marcell family's house. In April 2018, a week before the trial was set to begin, Hansen stated that he did not wish to contest the charges. This phrasing implies that the individual acknowledges that there is sufficient evidence against them, and that if the case were to proceed to trial, they might be found guilty and sentenced to 50 years in this case. Essentially, Hansen did not admit guilt, but decided not to fight for his exoneration. He explained his decision as a means to shorten the period during which he would not be able to see his children. The judge sentenced Hansen to 18 years in prison, the maximum term she could impose. Justin Hansen attempted to appeal the verdict, based on the expiration of the statute of limitations for prosecution in this case. However, in March 2021, the court upheld the sentence unchanged because when Hansen expressed his unwillingness to contest the charges, he effectively waived any disputes regarding the statute of limitations for criminal prosecution. Even with Hansen being charged with the assault, the question of motive remains open. Brittany still doesn't know why it all happened, but it's evident the beating was planned. After Brittany effectively relived the attack under hypnosis, her brain stopped blocking out unpleasant memories, and she recounted how it all unfolded. It turns out that on the day they agreed to have lunch together, she arrived at the house first. But before she could open the door, she felt a blow to her head. She even recalled seeing the attacker and asking him, "Why, Justin, why?" But she never got an answer. The only person who knows why he attacked the schoolgirl is Justin Hansen, who is unlikely to ever tell the whole truth. However, his motives may not sit well even with other inmates because in December 2018, after spending only 2 months in prison, he was severely beaten. Some may say he got a taste of his own medicine for assaulting the girl, although the exact reason for the attack is unknown. Regardless, Brittany considers the sentence a proper administration of justice, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life and her family's life. Although Brittani Marcell survived, she was no longer the carefree and cheerful girl who entered her home that day. In many ways, she will never be the same again. But after years of rehabilitation, she managed to successfully complete school and obtain a higher education, and the latest, 23rd surgery, allowed her to regain her charming smile.